At the turn of the 20th century, the Canadian Northern Railway had its eyes set on building Canada's second transcontinental railway. The Grand Trunk Pacific would build Winnipeg's Union Station, which opened in 1911, and they would allow the Canadian Northern Railway to operate out of it. But after that, their president Charles Melville Hayes refused to collaborate on anything further. So the Canadian Northern would carve a route that paralleled the Grand Trunk Pacific across the prairies, all the way northwest into today's town site of Jasper. And it was super cost effective because the Grand Trunk Pacific had pretty much done most of the heavy lifting. But the Canadian Northern at this point had begun accepting major subsidies from the British Columbia government to build their western terminus to Vancouver. So right here is where this would cut from Jasper and now heading south towards Kamloops, and also where the cost savings abruptly came to a halt. Now, the Canadian Pacific had already built the best route through the Fraser and Thompson Canyons 30 years earlier, now leaving the Canadian Northern with all of the unfavorable banks along the canyon. But on January 23rd of 1915, the Canadian Northern would drive home the last spike just outside of Ashcroft, BC, to complete Canada's third transcontinental railway. From there, they would turn their attention to building a grand passenger station on their west coast terminus. The city of Vancouver would cut a deal with the Canadian Northern. They would completely fill in the False Creek Flats on the promise that the Canadian Northern would build a railway hotel back on the city's downtown core. But prior to 1912, what we know today as False Creek was a giant mud flat that was filled in to allow the expansion of heavy industry and the railways over top of it. And this mud flat would stretch all the way back to today's Clark Drive. So to say that this was a massive project by the city was an absolute understatement. So they would fill in the flats, and construction on this new station would begin in 1917. But the Canadian Northern would never run a single passenger train out of it because on September 6th of 1918, they would file for bankruptcy and join over 120 railways throughout the rest of Canada that would be absorbed into a new government-operated Canadian National Railways, or as we know today, CN. Now, CN would continue the progress and finish the station the following year in 1919 at a final cost of
$1 million.
And with the grand opening on November 1st of that year. And the station would feature a smooth Indiana limestone facade with beautiful columns supporting the entranceway, and inside the station it featured some incredibly detailed ceiling moldings, some standard bench seats for passengers, which I think they're still using those exact same benches today. And I don't think they're chandeliers, which might be a lot more like cute lamps atop the ceiling. The center of the station also features a nice glass roof, allowing for loads of natural sunlight to come in. And keep in mind, this video was filmed right before Christmas, so lots of Christmas themed trees and decor all throughout. Now, I am born in Winnipeg, and I couldn't help but notice that the Pacific Central from the exterior looks almost identical to Winnipeg's Union Station, which I like quite a bit, because although they had almost no involvement in the building process of Winnipeg's Union Station, as it was completely a Grand Trunk Pacific design with the larger-than-life atrium when you walk into the station, the Canadian Northern were a lot like that guy on a group project that just didn't pull their weight. So I can appreciate the effort that they made to make their western terminus station look very similar to their eastern one back in Winnipeg. This was a clip for a full-length show. If you want to watch the full episode of the clip you just saw, click right here, you get the full show, and they go up live every single Sunday. If you want more clips of what you just saw, click right here, you can see the next great hit.